Hello, welcome to our presentation about boys and girls and their learning differences. Today we are going to explore the differences between boys and girls learning in literacy, math, and technology. But first, let's take a little quiz. These students tend to use more words and think more verbally. Girls. Girls' cortical emphasis is on verbal processing. Boys' brains tend to have cortical areas that are dedicated to spatial mechanical functioning. These students rely on pictures and moving objects when they write. Boys' visual systems rely on pictures and moving objects when they write. Girls excel in using words that reference color and other fine sensory movement. These students are prone to zoning out or sleeping through class. Boys tend to avoid these rest states by engaging in activities such as tapping their pencils or hitting classmates with spitballs. When the male's brain gets bored, it tends to shut down. However, females' brain functioning stays active even when they are bored. These students are considered developmentally ready for school at an earlier age. They can sit still and develop literacy readiness skills at an early age. Girls' frontal lobe develops earlier than boys'. This affects the decision-making areas of the brain. This means that girls tend to be less impulsive than boys. This is why many normal boys may be misdiagnosed with learning disabilities or behavioral disorders. These students are more efficient in multitasking. Girls can pay attention to more than one subject at a time and are better at transitioning. Boys' brains tend to compartmentalize brain activity. They find transitioning difficult and can benefit from project-oriented and depth-driven learning. These students are more competitive, aggressive, impulsive, and aggressive. Boys' brains produce less oxytocin, which leads to more aggressive, impulsive, and competitive behavior. They have less of a desire to comply and please others than girls. Let's talk about gender differences in literacy. True or false? There are more female college students than males. True. Difficulty with reading and writing plays a role in high dropout rates among Black males. For this reason, 57% of college students are now females. The ratio increases to 2-to-1 among the Hispanic and Black population. True or false? Boys tend to benefit from a word study program that teaches multiple word reading strategies. And that's false. An approach called synthetic phonics tends to benefit boys' word reading skills. The main principle behind synthetic phonics is that letter-sound correspondences and blending skills are taught early on at a relatively fast pace. With synthetic phonics, this is the only reading strategy children are taught. On the other hand, analytical phonics teaches multiple word reading strategies, including whole word recognition, context clues, and using grammatical knowledge to predict words. True or false? Girls benefit from the analytical phonics approach. False. Studies suggest that there is no disadvantage to girls who receive synthetic phonics instruction. However, if students, specifically girls, tend to have better verbal abilities and visual memory, then they are better equipped to use context and grammatical cues for word recognition. So why is synthetic phonics thought to be a better approach to teaching reading? The shorter lessons in synthetic phonics instruction may suit boys' attention spans. Synthetic phonics approach does not require students to have reading readiness skills, which also accommodates boys' developmental abilities. If boys who have poor literacy environments prior to school and poorer initial verbal abilities, then this fast introduction to phonics and blending skills will not disadvantage them the way other approaches may. Additionally, synthetic phonics integrates phonological and visual processing, which boys are inclined to do naturally. Studies also indicate that boys tend to rely more heavily on the rules in a word for reading than contextual information. True or false? Motivation is a factor for reading comprehension performance. True. Studies show that there's usually a difference between a child's cognitive ability and their reading comprehension performance. So this can be associated with lack of motivation. Research has concluded that there is a relationship between boys' attitudes and motivation and their reading skills. True or false? There is a significant difference among reading comprehension performance among children who read frequently versus those who do not. And that's true. In one study, 39% of girls say they read every day compared to 28% of boys. Reading frequency is strongly linked to reading achievement levels. 60% of people who say they read every day read above grade level, compared to the just 5% who say they never read. However, this statement is also false. Some evidence suggests that the frequency in which a child reads may not be as important as a factor as motivation. There are specific gender differences with regards to children's behaviors and feelings about reading. Girls report to enjoy reading, while boys tend to have negative attitudes about reading. Girls report to enjoy going to the library, while boys state that reading is hard and boring. Boys believe reading is more for girls and tend to cite reading as a way to help them find out what they need to know. In fact, the widest gender gap in reading was with regards to reading fiction. Not surprisingly, boys tend to read comics and engage in multimedia literacy, while girls enjoy fiction, poems, and plays, and use technology for email and instant messaging. Boys are aware that they lag behind in reading levels. In fact, these studies indicate that there are wider issues relating to boys' self-esteem and motivation with regards to learning in general. How do we increase boys' motivation and attitudes? First of all, let's embrace multimedia as additional modes of literacy. Some ideas for integrating media include using TV scripts as examples of writing with story elements, using movies such as Star Wars to scaffold writing with the use of props, characters, and fantasy conflicts can be very motivating to students. Using text supported by pictures are more appealing to boys, as it turns out Captain Underpants contains high levels of vocabulary while presenting appealing conflict supported by pictures. Teachers can also use movie trailers and other video literature to illustrate scenes from a book. How else can we motivate all students? While teachers can pose thought-provoking inquiry questions that capture students' interest and promote interdisciplinary learning, teachers can provide students with books that address these questions in some way. These questions don't have easy answers and create a need to read. Students can discuss multiple perspectives and write about the connections between the questions and the books that they're reading. With teacher modeling, teachers can show how they're thinking about comprehension, structure, word-solving features, and use of text features and structure. This makes content more understandable and demonstrates a reader's obstacles and endurance. By writing aloud, teachers model how they generate thoughtful and coherent essays. By giving students choice of text, they feel control over their learning rather than reading assigned class novels. Teachers model making connections to books with touchstone texts. Now we're going to move on to gender differences within mathematics instruction. True or false? Over time, males outperform and have a higher inherent aptitude for math than females. It's false, actually. According to a longitudinal study of gender difference and math performance in the U.S., researchers have found that both male and female students demonstrate the same growth trend in math performance over time, but females' math GPA is significantly higher than male. Gender differences that have been found with respect to math performance can be attributed to educational policy, instructional methods, learning style, parent attitudes and expectations, or all. And the answer is E, all of the above. Perceived gender differences and implications for math instruction are going to be discussed in the following slides. Gender differences in math have been shown to be both real and perceived, and both types affect performance and carry implications for instruction. There has been a persistent belief in American culture that males both outperform and have a higher inherent aptitude for math than females. There are studies that bolster this belief, but more recent longitudinal studies and literature reviews have found that boys and girls have an equal aptitude for mathematics. For example, in a 2006 study of gender differences in math performance in the U.S., Ding, Song, and Richardson found that both female and male students demonstrate the same growth trend in math performance over time. But females' math GPA is significantly higher than males. As noted before, males are better at spatial relations, and this school was thought to be the reason why males generally performed better on math tests. But research has indicated that verbal skills are better correlated with math proficiency. Recent research has shown that the decreased spatial mechanical skills in girls may contribute to a lack of success in certain specific areas of math in which boys do well. Whether or not problems with spatial skills contribute to girls' math difficulties, females believe that they do, and that the belief affects math performance. Interestingly, both boys and girls are equally likely to be diagnosed with dyscalculia, a specific math disability. Data from the National Assessment of Educational Progress, also known as the Nation's Report Card, shows a gap of only 2 points between girls' and boys' performance on standardized math assessments overall, a nominal difference based on age and skill being measured. Data from the first international mathematics study conducted in 1964 found that boys outperformed girls in most countries. However, in the second study conducted in the 80s, the gap was much smaller, and by the third study conducted in 1995, girls and boys had the same average mathematics achievement score. In a study about math and reading performance of 15-year-olds in various countries, it was found that the gender gap in mathematics is small and can be attributed to the change in the educational policy of various countries, which has specifically targeted female math achievement. According to a 2009 study published in the Straight Journal, socioeconomic status is a stronger predictor of math performance than gender, in that those children from low-income families perform significantly worse on measures of math achievement. This is an interesting fact that underscores the importance of looking beyond gender gap perceptions. The traditional curriculum and pedagogy of schools appear to perpetuate the disparity between male and female achievement in math. Teachers do not consciously treat boys and girls differently, but myths about gender and learning math can turn into a self-fulfilling prophecy. Expect success from all students, and it is likely that they will live up to your expectations. Since girls tend to be auditory learners and boys tend to be visual kinesthetic learners, each individual has a preferred learning style. Memorization of steps and procedures, often inherent to teaching of mathematics, may not necessarily lend itself to all learning styles. Also, there are developmental differences in which different skills emerge at different times. Teachers of younger children, for example, should take into account that at birth, boys are a few weeks behind girls and remain behind girls until late adolescence. Mathematics programs must be flexible enough to allow children to use their own natural thinking ability and strengths to solve problems. Often, worksheets and problems presented in textbooks are not very good at promoting thinking and discussion. Additionally, traditional textbooks often give boys an advantage. Keep in mind that boys tend to be better at tasks that involve maintaining and manipulating visual images in working memory, and girls tend to be better at tasks that require verbal processing and rapid retrieval of information. Since boys prefer competition, teachers can allow students to use a task-oriented approach in their group work, where boys can choose tasks that they can do individually and then report back to the group, and girls may choose to work together. Boys tend to prefer to work individually, whereas girls tend to focus more on the needs of the group and emphasize cooperation. What is